Hello, how you doing, folks? Today is Monday, the 19th of October, 2020. Today again is Monday, the 19th of October, 2020. We are in Finsbury Park. This is in North London, United Kingdom or England. Time now is about midday, before midday. Temperature outside is about 15 degrees, 14 degrees, and when the wind blows, it can feel about 10 degrees. So once again, we're in Finsbury Park. This is north of London in the United Kingdom, and it's about 15 degrees. I could hear the wind. I hope the wind isn't interfering with the sound. I've done some webcasts from here before, and during the summer when it was extremely hot. And so this is now autumn, the falls. You can see some birds up in the trees. These are pigeons. As Bob Marley says, three little birds going tweet, tweet, tweet. I get the impression the picture's going to be dark because we got the sun in the top of the picture, so I'm going to be a bit dark. But I'm trying to catch some of the water. You can see some of the water there. Water has a calming and soothing effect sometimes. But usually when I do these webcasts, podcasts, I don't usually actually plan to do that. It's just that sometimes you might meet somebody in the park and you just get into a conversation, or meet somebody on the street and get into a conversation. So, it's just at the spur of the moment. It's not really actually planned. So, today's Monday. The last webcast I did, I said it is imminent that we're going to have a second lockdown. Well, in fact, we've got a curfew at the moment. What is in force at the moment is a curfew. And so everything shuts down at 10 p.m. In England, London. So 10 p.m. everything shuts down except for one or two essential services. If you're doing takeaway food, or there are one or two exemptions, but basically there's a curfew 10 o'clock, and it's not that you can't be out on the street, but there are no services, there's no entertainment, there's no restaurants, there's no nightclubs, there is no pubs. Everything shuts down at 10 p.m. So that's what's in at the moment. That's definite. In Scotland and Wales, no, not Scotland, in Wales and in Ireland, there is a more stringent quarantine lockdown procedure. People can't visit, other family members cannot visit other family members even in their own home. They maybe have one or two people meet outside of in a garden somewhere, but the rule of six doesn't apply there. The rule of one actually applies there. So they're literally on a curfew. Wales, you can't leave the area, and people from England can't go into Wales, and Wales is part of the United Kingdom. So Scotland, I'm not quite too sure. They're not on lockdown, but they're on curfew 10 o'clock. They're on the rule of six, no more than 6 people. The whole of the UK is on the rule of 6 tier. They have a new system now, 3-tier system. So they're on number 2, which is, well, number 2 is the middle, and that is that no more than people can't they can't congregate in their house. So even if there's 2 different families, they can't meet in their house. But the rule of 6 applies outside, in the garden, in open air. So in enclosed space, it's only your bubble or your support group. But there are exceptions. Nurses, people who look after you, people who give you care, etc., etc. People who are very important to you to keep your mental health. So there are exceptions in that. But in general, nobody outside of your family can meet you inside of your house. The rule of 6 applies outside, in open air. I may be right, may be wrong. It's all changing. But what is amazing is Manchester is about to go into a more stringent lockdown, which means only essential services, and you can't meet anybody outside of your household, inside or outside. And there's a massive political debate at the moment, because if industry is locked down, it means that people are not yo, how you doing, man? You all right? Yeah, man on a bike there. Yeah, so Manchester, and so there's a big political thing at the moment that the mayor of Manchester, so the north of England is actually on a more stringent lockdown than the south, us down here in London. So there's a north-south divide, and it's really showing. But what the mayor is actually asking for is to make sure that the companies and the people that are locked down, that they can get furloughed, as in the sense that they could get money. And this time around, the government is subsidizing people and companies to a lesser degree, to the amount of 60%. And in a couple of weeks' time, the government subsidy is going to come to an end. And only if you have a viable business, if your business is viable, then you can continue claiming the government subsidy, but only to the amount of like 64%. And it's almost been a year now, and there are some companies who are literally chucking in the towel. So we are in on a knife edge here. It's going to be a roller coaster. Let me just turn this a little bit that way, so that I hope you can still get me, so you can get more of the background there. We on a knife edge at the moment. We are there are people in a couple of weeks' time who are literally going to be unemployed, because the company, it's almost coming up to a year that these companies have not been functioning properly and haven't been selling and making money. And so they're literally chucking in the towel, making people redundant, and they're more into their own, the owners of these companies are now in their own personal survival, rather than trying to have a viable business and employ people. So we are on the edge of a real roller coaster ride. At the end of this roller coaster ride, are you going to survive economically, or are you going to survive physically? So if the virus doesn't get you, then the economic situation would get you, because you got to live. I could see this camera bouncing about because I haven't tightened it down. I just wanted I wanted to catch the background, and it's perfect the moment kind of thing. Right, so we're on a real roller coaster at the moment, and can you see these ducks down there? I guess you can hear them. We're on a real roller coaster, and we're getting the ticket to this roller coaster ride at this moment. The government, as in Boris Johnson, hasn't officially said we're going to go into more stringent lockdown, and what that means is that there's like 16,000 people being infected every day. Now 10,000 was like the max on March, when they had the lockdown, which was you couldn't move. Only essential services was allowed to operate, and we're about to go into a similar phase, but it looks like the government is waiting for the last minute. They're toughing it out for the last minute before they call for this lockdown. And it's going to be a roller coaster ride, because there's two things at stake. It's your livelihood or your life. And people who are on low income, they've got no choice. They're in a sort of Russian roulette. They've got to go out and earn the money to pay for their day-to-day living, because they're living below the zero poverty line. And if they stop working, then they can't have food, they can't pay their rent, they'll be out on the streets. And believe you me, I've seen a lot of people out on the streets at the moment. So the situation has moved into a more serious situation. Whereas people weren't allowed to be chucked out on the street, I'm seeing more and more people out on the streets, and I'm seeing more and more people coming up to me and begging me, brother, have you got a dime? And I gotta say to people, sorry, I ain't got nothing for you today. So it is really serious. Today, the 19th of October, Monday the 19th of October 2020, they tried to ease the lockdown and start the economy going, and 2 weeks later they had to ease back because the infection rate was rising, the death rate started to rise. At the moment, the death rate is around, it's averaging about 150 deaths per day. Now, yesterday being Sunday, it was a bit low, it's around 60. Today, Monday, it'll probably jump to 200. What is happening at the moment is that the infection rate is rising, the hospitalization is rising, and everything is rising at a very, very steep curve. But the government are holding their nerves before they call they call it a circuit breaker. What this thing means, the circuit breaker, is they call for the lockdown like they did in March, total lockdown. You can't go out only for exercise. You could only be in open space. You can't meet anybody in your house. Part of that lockdown is actually enforced right now. So we are on the edge of a real roller coaster ride, and at the end of it, some of us won't be around, economically or physically, because the virus will get you, or the economic situation would have you be out on the street um, in a real bad situation. You know, some people are lucky; they got family and friends who can support them, and some people are not so lucky. The government support is actually being eased off. It's not so much, not so much, not so much strong as it was before. You know, so if you can survive this situation, I wish you well. So I hope, however you're watching this, first of all, you got a place to stay. They haven't kicked you out of your wherever you're staying, because there's lots of jobs and work that has stopped. And if you're self-employed, if you can't do your work, then you haven't got the money to pay your rent, to pay the bills, to pay for the food. So you'll end up out on the street. So the first thing is, I hope that you got a place to stay, you got food to eat, and you're warm, because it's now autumn. And this is the danger period, because this cold weather accelerates the situation that we're in. And if you haven't got things together, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So that's a little podcast. I'll say goodbye for now. Hope you're okay. Catch you on the other side.